Thanks for joining us for your First Alert Drought Report. I'm your First Alert meteorologist, Callie Zinandri. Let's start with some good news. Extreme and severe drought conditions across Colorado remain unchanged this week. But with the warm, dry weather we've had lately, we're seeing moderate drought and abnormally dry areas expanding, especially across the Front Range and the Eastern Plains. Looking ahead, our long-range forecast models are hinting at some much-needed moisture returning to the state, with a chance of rain and snow starting Sunday and continuing into early next week. And speaking of moisture or lack of it, Colorado's snowpack is off to one of its slowest starts in years. In fact, the state's snowpack is tracking at its third worst start on record and lowest since 2017. That's raising some concerns, not just for the ski season, but for our water supply. To help us break it all down, we're joined by Dr. Stephen Fosnot, a snowpack expert from Colorado State University. Stephen, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Callie.
Now let's start with the basics. What is snowpack and why is it so important to Colorado's water supply?
So we live here in Colorado and we're used to snow falling, but the snowpack that we really care about is the snow that's up in the mountains, which is only a small portion of what we see across the state. So up above about 8,000 feet, we have snow that sticks around all year or all winter long, and that's really important for tourism, for water resources, and that's the big snow. You know, think of going up over Loveland Pass or Berthoud Pass or any of those mountains, and you see by March or so, there's 6-8 feet of snow up there.
Now, how is Colorado's snowpack looking right now compared to average for this time of year?
Yeah, we're not doing well. A lot of the snow measuring stations are only at 10 or 20% of the normal. Things are really dry, and we're not only don't we have much snow up there, but we had a pretty dry, at least the central northern part of the state had a really dry summer and fall, meaning that there's even less water in the soil. So that really kind of compounds our problem with snowpack. Last year was okay. This year so far, not looking good at all.
Now, with such a slow beginning, do you anticipate a below average year overall, or is there no clear connection between a slow start and a slow finish?
That's always difficult. You know, that's the reality is that's a $1 trillion question. But we're not looking good. We're in a weak La Nina, which usually means that we get a lot more snow in the fall, November, December, and then the rest of the winter is pretty mellow. So right now we're low, and we're anticipated to be about average, but it's also expected that it's going to be drier than normal. So it doesn't look good.
Now, snowpack isn't just about skiing. It's our biggest natural water reservoir, like you spoke about. How does this early shortfall affect water supply if we don't see a big turnaround?
Well, we don't need the water right now, but we're really reliant on that come springtime. You know, agriculture, municipal uses, all the tourism related to water in the rivers, our rafting, etc. So we had a pretty dry summer. We had last year wasn't very good. Last winter turned out to be not what we expected. So, you know, we could be in real trouble because we just don't have that water. It needs to come from somewhere.
Now, how have Colorado's snowpack trends changed over the past few decades, and how much of that is tied to climate change, and what are you most concerned about moving forward?
We've seen a lot of decreases. You know, things aren't quite as dire as they seem, but since about the late 1970s, early 1980s, a lot of locations have seen a downward trend. We're just seeing less snow. Some areas, though, even some lower locations where you'd think you'd get less snow over time, have actually seen more. Places like Copeland Lake, which is southern parts or lower part of Rocky Mountain National Park, getting more snow. So things have been declining. High elevation places have been about average for the last decade, and that's been kind of strange because we normally have these big year-to-year fluctuations. So what does the future hold? We do need a big snow year here and there to fill in some of the gaps, and we haven't had many. 2019 was a pretty decent one, but that was 6 years ago.
Now, I know this time of year is very volatile, and we could see a big storm come in, and that could move those numbers quickly. When should we be concerned, Stephen? How far into the season do we need to see this turnaround come before we really start sounding those alarm bells?
That you make a great point because we're early in the season. We're doing math with little numbers, so to get 10% that doesn't really of average doesn't mean much. So you're right. We could get one big storm and we're back in the game. If it's middle of January and we're still at 50%, then we really need to rely on those spring storms. Think of the big storms we get sometimes in March and April where it's dumping 1 or 2 feet of snow along the Front Range. That can help because that's going to dump even more up in the mountains. But right now, with being in a weak La Nina, it's not looking that good that we're really going to get that snow that we need. So let's hope we get a couple of good snowfalls soon, because I know everyone wants to get out there on their skis and snowboards.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for your insight, and we'll be certainly watching to see how this winter unfolds, both on the slopes and for our state's water supply. We will see you back here next week for your First Alert Drought Report.